And what then? What then? Mary Magdalene said, I have seen the Lord. You know, you hear lots of people say that in lots of different ways. Today, many people proclaim loudly, I have been saved. And to that, my friends, I ask the question, okay, what then? I am a believer in a concept that it only makes a difference if it makes a difference. A church that Rod and I belonged to years ago, there was a gentleman who was a member of that church. He was a polio survivor from youth. And he was about 3 feet long. He was in an automated wheel bed, kind of a cross between a wheelchair and a bed. And it had an oxygen system attached to it, and a little tubing with a little pipe stem so that he could draw on oxygen as he needed it. He had no use of his arms at all since he was a youth. He did everything with his feet. That even included making miniature doll houses to scale with little 4x4 tiles in the bathroom, perfect scale, perfect grouting. It was just wonderful the way he did that. He was a computer superintendent for Ross Perot's company in Dallas, graduate of Texas University, very intelligent person. And he drove a van all by himself. It was specially fitted so that he had an elevator, he could get up and drive forward and operate the vehicle with his feet, totally. He always talked about handicaps, his and others. And he used that phrase, you know, it only makes a difference if it makes a difference. And our pastor called a friend Joe the healthiest person in the congregation. Because you see, he had figured out the answer to that question. What then? Our reading today is about an evangelist who is really a most unusual evangelist as you think about the times. This is a person who had the willingness to spread the word of God, and that willingness on her part is well known through our studies of the scriptures. And it's also well known that she's just not exactly somebody that you would pick out as being one who would be chosen to spread the good news from the gospel. And the fact that this person has been singled out is even more startling because you have to consider the fact that she was a woman. She was a woman in a time when it was not the way to do things to have a prominent leader of the faith being a woman. Even today, in many of our church communities, women are not considered to be worthy of leadership roles nor for ordination into the ministry. Now, there's a story that's a little on the ridiculous side, but I think it kind of highlights some of the difficulties we even have today about the role of women in the church. And this is about a pastoral nominating committee that chose a woman, a female candidate for pastor. And when the search committee brought the nomination back to the church for approval, all but one of the congregation confirmed the selection. And that one member wasn't particularly opposed in having an objection to a female pastor, but he had a history of having enjoyed going on fishing trips with the prior ministers, and he just knew this woman was not going to enjoy fishing. That's not what women were about in this guy's eyes. So as soon as this new female pastor was installed, he invited her to go fishing with him, and she took him up on it. And she went fishing, and On the first try, she was in the boat, and they were in the middle of the pond, and she remembered. She had left her fishing gear back in the car. And so the guy kind of knew that something like that would happen, but he said, I'll row back to the shore and you can get your fishing gear. And she says, no. She said, I've been already too much trouble to you and inconvenienced too much. So with that, she got up out of the boat and started to walk back to shore. And at this point, the man thought to himself, that figures, she can't even swim. This highlights a struggle that some churches have today when they consider the role of women in the church. But thankfully, as disciples, we don't have any doubt about the role of women in the church. We resolved that many years ago as we approved ordination for women, and we have done so for many years. And our leader of our faith tradition, our president and general minister, Dr. Sharon Watkins, is a very highly respected female pastor. So the important thing about this message for us this morning about the woman in the well certainly is not about the quality of the woman to spread the good news. That's a given. But this particular woman had a lot going against her when she met with Jesus. She was allegedly, at least by some standards, not a very nice lady. She had all kinds of problems. She'd been married 5 times, and the guy she was now living with was not even her husband. So it was really kind of shocking that Jesus would even talk to this woman. Not only because she was a woman, but in those times, men didn't talk to strange women, much less to Samaritan women. Years ago, I remember the presidential debates between Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter. And when Carter would say something that Reagan didn't like, Reagan would caustically say and get a grin on his face, and he'd say, well, there you go again. Or there he goes again. You know, I can just hear the crowds there at the well, and the woman at the well was there saying, there he goes again. You know, you can never tell what this guy is going to do. He eats and drinks with the worst kind of people, with drinkers, with thieves, with sinners, with tax collectors, with prostitutes. And there he is, even talking to this sinful woman over here at the well. A woman who has been married many times now, and she's even living with some guy to whom she's not married. And you might remember that those were times when there were laws on the books. They prescribed that an adulteress could be stoned to death. So you can imagine how surprised she was that Jesus would even have anything to do with her. Somebody of his piety and his stature could not have any dealing with her. For him to have anything to do with her was really, even in her mind, going too far. She was a woman who was a village outcast. She couldn't even relate or talk to the other women in the village. Yet Jesus sees possibilities in her. He not only speaks to her, but he uses a term that would be shocking for many people to hear and to understand. He uses the term woman. Now, woman is a mighty powerful term as it's interpreted in the Greek language. The original meaning is not a term of scolding or contempt. It is a terming of love